Hello, Laura. My name is Ioana, and I am writing on my blog pisica.ro. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and my question actually is on autonomy. On what can we do about the conflict that appears between, with the older child, I mean, between our need to know them safe and their need to get off the strings, to, I don't know, go at the store and buy something, or go at the school. For example, my daughter's school is not very close to our home. And right now, I cannot imagine the time when I will be able, not her, when I will be able to let her go by herself to school. I'm terrified about that moment. And this is my question: how can we encourage autonomy in bigger children, autonomy like doing things on their own that are, in our eyes, very risky? And not only in our eyes, they are risky because sometimes things happen. How can we do about this fear?
Well, obviously, your first job as a parent is to keep your child safe. You have to do that. So you're encouraging autonomy as a parent within healthy limits, right? Safety limits at each stage. And so you as the parent have the responsibility at each stage of figuring out what's a safe limit. You know, you're not going to let your 4-year-old cross the street by themselves, right? Because a 4-year-old actually can't evaluate traffic conditions. Whereas an 8-year-old probably can cross the street by herself. She can, actually, if she's well practiced in looking at the lights and making sure nobody's turning and has been taught. But how does a child go from being 4 to 8 and gain those skills and get well practiced? By doing it with us. So every time you cross the street with your 4-year-old, because of course one of the biggest risks is being killed by a car for a child. So with your 4-year-old and your 5-year-old and your 6-year-old and your 7-year-old, as you're crossing the street, you're narrating what you're doing. Oh, it's safe to cross. Let's make sure nobody's turning because they have a green light too, right? And so every single time you cross the street, you're practicing. And by the time your child is 8, you're saying, you be in charge when we cross the street. You show me how to do it. You be in charge. Great words to encourage autonomy. You be in charge. Show me how to do it. And your child will proudly take you through, and you can see whether she remembers to check that cars are turning, or, you know, whatever. Or, you know what, it's already yellow. I don't think we should cross yet. It's about to turn red. We don't have time, right? Or whatever. So by that, you know, so that's starting whenever is an appropriate time. And then by the time she's at a certain age, she will be able to do that herself, obviously. Now, there are certain things you're still not going to let her walk by herself through a dangerous neighborhood to go someplace at the age of 11 or even at the age of 14, right? You're going to need to keep her safe, but you're talking about what those dangers are and how to navigate them, right? And children do learn. I mean, if she goes off to university by herself when she's 18, she's going to have to keep herself safe. You can't assume that she's going to know how to do it at 18 if she didn't start at 14. So at each stage, you're teaching her about the dangers. And, you know, she might want to be more independent and do things more herself. And so you can have the discussions, so whatever she wants to do, that you feel a need to set a limit, and this can start when she's 4, by the way. You want to do this, but I'm concerned about that. And it doesn't have to be about an independence thing. It can be, you want to eat this cookie now. I'm concerned that it's almost dinner time. Or I'm concerned that you actually had a cookie earlier and we don't have more than 1 cookie a day, right? or whatever your limit is, whatever your concern is. If you start this when children are young, where you express your, how are we going to work this out, right? This is my concern, this is what you want, how are we going to work this out? You will end up with an 11-year-old who will say to you, Mom, I want to go over to Anna's house after school, but her mom won't be home yet. I know you won't like that. By 11, she'll be telling you, because she'll know that's your first question. Will her mother be home, right? She'll know that, and she'll say, I know what you're going to ask. Her mother won't be home yet, but her mother will be home soon. I promise you we won't get into any trouble. Here's what we're going to do. Now you're raising a child who's got good judgment, who's able to take care of herself in the situation and figure out what's necessary to take good care of herself. She's able to actually meet your needs before you even ask, right, about how she's going to keep herself safe or whatever. You might still say, I don't really want you going over to Anna's house without her mom, even though her mom will be home soon. Why don't we wait until another time when her mom will be home, like on the weekend, and you can play with her? You might just say no, right? But you're going to find that you're going to have a child who is able to negotiate with you in a constructive way because she takes your concerns seriously, because you started early to say, here's what I need, this is what you want, how are we going to make this work, right? And you don't give up on the things that are important to you, right? Mm-hmm. But you try to find a way to meet both, find a win-win solution, right? And then when she's 14 or 17, right, she's practiced and she's also thought through what are the dangers in the situation, what would my mother say, right? Oh, my mother would be concerned about this or about that. How am I going to keep myself? And you just ask that question. I'm concerned about safety here. How are you going to keep yourself safe in this situation? And the earlier you start these discussions, the better. If you wait till she's 15, she will just roll her eyes, right? Like, Mom, no one else worries about this. You're the one who's always worried about this, even though all the mothers worry about it, and all the fathers too, right?
She already does this sometimes, exactly. Rolling her eyes.
Yes. So it's just for everybody, the earlier you start, the better, right? That you're listening to her concerns, but she has to listen to yours. But so with the 11-year-old, I would really listen. What is it she wants to do? She wants to walk to school by herself, let's say. But you don't think that's a safe thing?
No, she's 8 now, and she doesn't.
Did you just say she's 11 and she's
no,
dating?
she's 8. She's 8 years old. She's
okay.
8.
Yeah.
She doesn't want every day to do things, but sometimes when she's nervous and maybe for another reason, not for not being able to go, I don't know where, she starts saying, "I can't do anything alone. I'm not allowed to go." On my own to school, you treat me like a baby.
Yes, and so the truth is of this, that all children need a certain amount of autonomy where they get to make decisions within safe boundaries. And you could examine whether she's getting enough of that. Because I'm hearing there's some needs that aren't being met here, right? And so you could examine whether, is she allowed to make her own decisions about lots of things? Even though the safety things, you put some parameters, right? Within those safe parameters, can she make her own decisions? That would be important. The other thing, she's only 8, it's true, but she might need already to do some of the things I recommend for kids who are a little older, like 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. They need to take risks. Children need to take physical risks. All children, but especially by the time they're in the teen years, but really all children. You know, a preschool teacher told me in the United States that children in the United States, 3 and 4-year-olds, can't walk on uneven surfaces. I said, what do you mean they can't? She said, they're not able to without falling down. I said, what are you talking about? And she said, their parents don't let them. The parents are worried they'll fall down, so they stop them. And I think we, in our culture, we're so worried the child might fall and scrape their knee that we stop them from doing basic things that any child would have done forever, right? I was a climber when I was little. I probably scared my parents terribly by climbing on everything, right? And, you know, other kids are runners, and you have to keep the child safe, climbers and runners and all of them. But we also have to let them do things that are a little bit on the risky side, because yes, they might fall and skin their knee, but there's a worse risk if we don't let them do those things. The worse risk is that they feel over-controlled. They feel that they're not ever allowed to make their own decisions. They can't walk on uneven surfaces. They don't feel like they're ever trying their wings. How will they develop their wings, right? Children need to physically push themselves. Push themselves may not be the way to say it really, because we're not pushing them. It's them experimenting physically and testing themselves, right? They must do those things, some more than others. And if we don't let them, they will get angry and they will become rebellious. And you might have some of that going on. So how could you allow your daughter to do that in safe boundaries? When my daughter got that way, I said, you know what, I think we should try rock climbing. And there was a wall that they had in Brooklyn, New York, where I live, a wall that she could climb safely, where they hooked her up to belts and stuff, and they had teachers. And when someone would tell her to be careful, it wasn't me, it was the teacher. And she was allowed to advance as fast as her capability took her. And she loved to climb and go up high and do this and test herself. And I just think every child's different, but finding a way for them to take some physical risks often solves this problem.